the entrepreneurs have created this gift of being savagely driven regardless of the obstacles and to continue pushing through all of the no's and all of the failures. In that brilliance of and gift of an entrepreneur is also their blind spot, because they can do that exact same thing with their health and just block out the damage that they're doing until they have a heart attack and they're laying on the floor. Well, hello and welcome to the Infinite Financial Freedom Podcast, where we empower you with financial literacy and guide you on your journey to financial freedom. Today, we're going to be guiding you to physical freedom, not financial freedom, but I do think they dovetail well together. I'm Josh Mettle, and I'm here with Dr. David Boyd, the founder of Blindspot Medical, a concierge health practice focused on helping high-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, and executives eliminate the hidden health risks, extend longevity, and operate at peak capacity. Dr. Boyd's work sits at the intersection of data-driven medicine, personal optimization, and longevity science. Oh my gosh, he's speaking my love language. His clients don't go to him because they're sick. They go to him to stay sharp, stay alive, and scale their lives. Today, we're going to do a deep dive on how health isn't just maintenance, it's leverage. Dr. Boyd, it's a privilege. So glad to have you with me here today.
Josh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So we were introduced by our friend Jesse Ray, and he introduced you as the entrepreneur's doctor. So let's maybe start there. Like, how did you get into this space of serving high-powered entrepreneurs and CEOs?
Frustration. That's how I got here.
I love
Absolute frustration. I'll tell you the story. So it was, if we go back to 2020, that was a mess for absolutely everybody. And I was a hospital doctor in 2020. And it was like nothing that really had ever seen before. It was like a daily war zone. And it was a weird time, because if you looked on the news, everybody was dying of COVID. If you looked on social media, nobody was dying of COVID. And then there was this actuality. This was kind of a weird in between. And really what it did, I think the benefit for that time, there was a lot of loss, a lot of benefit for a lot of people. And if we focus on the positive, the big benefit there was it took our healthcare system and put it under a microscope and really showed all the cracks and flaws that there were. For me personally, I was working tremendous hours. I was barely ever seeing my kids. And I stopped and just professionally kind of questioned things of like, okay, do I want to be part of this system or not? And then I asked myself a tough question. I was like, okay, well, if you wave a magic wand, you knew you couldn't fail, what would you create? And that's what Blindspot is today. I had no business experience. I was not an entrepreneur. I had no idea what I was doing. But I had this idea and this dream that it's like, okay, here's the way I think it should be done. And would this even work in the first place? Now, God intervened, and I had an interesting thing happen. I start going the process of going through the steps. What would this practice even look like, and so forth. And then a good friend of mine, he's about 10 years older than me, super fit guy, Ironman triathlete. He has a heart attack out of nowhere. He was doing a CrossFit style workout in his garage, felt pressure in his chest, had to lay down for a while.
Wow.
Sure enough, he ended up getting a stent in his right coronary artery. About 2 weeks later, I saw him after the fact, and he asked me a smart question. He said, what could I have done to prevent this? And we're sitting in a Starbucks, because, when you start a business, that's where all businesses start, is in a Starbucks.
All of them.
So I'm sitting in a Starbucks, and I said, I've had this idea of how to approach something like this so someone wouldn't find themselves in your situation. But I don't know. I don't know that anybody would want to do it. And he was angry. He was upset. He's like, you got to be kidding me. He said, so you're telling me because of your lack of confidence that it would work out, I had a heart attack. And that's when it hit. That it wasn't about me. It wasn't about my success or failure. It was, there's a path, there's a solution that's there that currently wasn't provided. And that's really where things began. So as I started building my practice and so forth, I did all the things. I read I read what Russell Brunson's Expert Secrets. That was like the first business book I really read. Started crafted a perfect webinar, went on Facebook and did it and so forth. You realize when you become an entrepreneur, there's a path that's there, and there's these little golden nuggets along the way that almost every entrepreneur has followed a very similar path. So as I did that, I started naturally attracting other entrepreneurs. And I became really the entrepreneur doctor in that sense. And each one of these folks that would come in and start going through the process and everything, we're always curious about other people's business. It says, tell me how it works. Where are you at right now? And they give me a little pearl of wisdom. And so what you see today is a collection of all those pearls of wisdom over the last 6 years. I have there's some folks I can tell you that are patients of mine. Some folks for privacy I can't. I have one billionaire that I take care of. In terms of the patient population I have, if it's a celebrity entrepreneur that you follow on Instagram, they're likely my patient.
Mm.
And when I sit down and I really think about it, like I have to almost pinch myself. Now I take care of the folks that wrote the business books that I was reading within my journey. So it's pretty cool how it worked out.
I'm smiling, and I'm guessing every other entrepreneur is too, because you may not have been trained as an entrepreneur, but you clearly had entrepreneurial blood. Because what entrepreneurs do really well is they find problems and they decide to solve the problem, regardless if they have any clue how in the hell they're going to do it. And
Absolutely.
that's exactly what you did. So I applaud you for that. And I agree with you. That was an incredibly frustrating time in the medical industry, and there just has to be a better way. So let's get into this a little bit as it relates to your expertise and what you've learned over the last 6 years. What are the biggest blind spots? And by the way, your practice is Blindspot Medical. What are the biggest blind spots that you see in high performing entrepreneurs? Could even be athletes, but people who are under tremendous stress and pressure professionally, who may look healthy, but they're quietly running themselves into burnout or breaking themselves down.
You're absolutely right. And you said that perfectly because it's that quiet demise that's going on that's
Yep.
just insidious and you don't know. You know,
Yeah.
the interesting thing, if you start looking at the psychology of an entrepreneur, is that, we get so problem focused and you just drive forward and you drive forward no matter what.
Yeah.
But the issue becomes there's always a cost. And that cost is typically, your lack of sleep, tremendous amounts of stress, which I hear all the time. I'm not stressed. No, no, my friend, you are. You've learned to mentally handle the stress,
That's right.
but your body still goes through it. So entrepreneurs naturally, in order to, be successful, become pretty tough mentally. And so on the mental side, you can have 10 fires going on at the same time, and you're like, it's just another Thursday. This happens all the time. But the reality of the situation is there's tension in the body. There's
Mm.
there's all these ups and downs with blood pressure and so forth. We know that inflammation is pretty much the mother of every frickin' problem that there is, that eventually, as we age, you take age and inflammation and put those two things together, along with some limiting self-beliefs, and that's really the recipe for what eventually becomes early death or aging in such a way that you can't really do the things that you still want to do. I've yet to find an entrepreneur that is planning for retirement. Like everyone is like, you may slow down a little more and take a few more vacations as you get older, but everybody's like, I love what I do. I want to do this until I'm dead and keep pushing and moving forward. So, my big secret, I'm going to tell you my big secret right now here, Josh, is reverse engineering. And
Mm.
that's why I love your podcast. I love what you have, what you've put out so that you can actually have just digestible nuggets of wisdom that folks have for their finances. Because in order to have that true financial freedom, well, you want to be around for it at the same time. So the two
Amen.
things go very well together. So that's really the name of the game is I think the biggest blind spot is looking at those areas of, where is where are these stressors that are constantly there? And then you start looking at so that's within life, and then you start looking within the body and so forth of where are the cracks in the foundation that we need to reinforce so that ultimately you can really build the empire, the castle, the life that you want.
So if I'm hearing you right, the blind spot is similar to the gift that entrepreneurs have. The entrepreneurs have created this gift of being savagely driven, regardless of the obstacles, and to continue pushing through all of the no's and all of the failures. In that brilliance of and gift of an entrepreneur is also their blind spot because they can do that exact same thing with their health and just block out the damage that they're doing until they have a heart attack and they're laying on the floor.
It's just the other side of the coin. That's it.
It's really interesting that you say that. I had an interesting thing happen this morning. I had a big webinar yesterday, and I'd been preparing for it, and I really wanted to knock it out of the park. Like I wanted to make sure the value that I gave to the members of that insider community was a 10 out of 10, and I was putting a lot of pressure on myself. Good news was I crushed it. Then I immediately went into kind of taking care of myself. I had a lighter afternoon. I had a full 8 hours of sleep. I fasted last night. I did all the things that that in a normal situation, my Aura ring this morning would have said I had a 95 sleep score and my heart rate would have been 46, 47 at its low point. And the lowest I got last night was in the mid 50s. And as I was thinking this morning, I was like, well, wait a minute. I went to bed early. I turned off my screens. I was in bed for 8.5 hours. I was fasted since 2 p.m. I had a long walk in the sunshine yesterday. All of those protocols usually get me into the 40s in my heartbeat. And I was a full almost 10 beats faster at my low point. So I was off by 20 to 25%. And I hadn't actually linked that or correlated that with the fact that I had all the stress I was putting on myself from that webinar. Do you think those two things are linked?
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Absolutely. And the thing is, and I'm so glad that you see that because most of us don't. Most of you just keep pushing, keep driving, like you do all the things. And um, there's always a cost. So that's a snapshot. That's just right then. Think about to get to where you are right now. How many of those things did you have to go through, right? How many stressors collectively you take that? And how old are you, Josh?
27. Just kidding. 47.
You look amazing. You look absolutely amazing.
Thanks, brother.
So and throughout your career, you've been doing this, what, 20 something years?
Yeah, 20. I've been in the mortgage industry 26 years.
26 years. So you think of all the ups and downs. You think of like when 26 years ago when you were just bootstrapping things and you were learning the ropes and like the stress that goes along then. And of course, we're in our 20s. So we're like, who needs sleep, right? You keep pushing
Right.
forward. Then you're in your 30s, right? And kids start coming around and you start building life and getting a bit more serious about it. At the same time, you're like, okay, I collectively also need to build business and be able to provide for my family and so forth. And then by the time you're in your 40s, well, now you're a master of your craft. And so now you're really going after things. And in the process thereof, you're taking bigger risks. And you're the all of those risks, it's higher, right? So we started off like working in the tens of thousands to the hundreds of thousands. So now you're up and you're taking $1 million risks and so forth. All of it has a price. There's
Mm.
a weight to all of these things. And this is the reason why entrepreneurs die faster compared to the regular public. Consider this. If we look at past presidents, okay, not getting political, but just look at past presidents. The majority of past presidents, when they come out of office, usually in office, they age tremendously fast. But when they come out of office, these guys live usually into like their 90s or so. And it's not because they have like some genetic code that is, far better or anything like that. The level of health care that they get is beyond what most people have. Like him or not, what was his name? Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter, he was like in his 90s. The guy had cancer multiple times and everything still kept on kicking. It's because there's a different level of healthcare that most folks don't have an access to. It's the same thing. You look at royal families, senators, even like all these folks, they live to an older age. And we're at this exciting time right now where I have a prediction for you that in the next 5, 10 years, you're going to see a massive shift in healthcare. It's already happening. You know, you're starting to have larger companies come out, and particularly in the longevity space, biohacking space, so forth and so on. Right now, in my opinion, it's still very disjointed. You have folks trying to sell peptides on Instagram. They're like, this is the magic peptide stack that you have. You look at the supplement industry. It's surpassed big pharma. It's in the trillions of dollars in the supplement industry, right?
Amazing.
You have all these folks that they're trying to get in on this. And the reality of the situation is if you just throw the kitchen sink at your health, yeah, you may hit some things, you may not. What really the method that works, and we've seen this from, these presidential healthcare type programs to folks that are actually living longer in different like blue zones and things like that. When you
Hmm.
take all of this and you actually make a strategic plan for an individual, that's how you can really reverse engineer of, hey, how do you want to age and live in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, so forth and so on.
82% of entrepreneurs say that the lack of access to capital is holding them back from growing their business. And worse than that, up to a third of all businesses that go out of business this year say they've done so because of a lack of access to capital. That's why we created the Entrepreneur Capital Lines of Credit. If you're an entrepreneur and you need access to capital, click into the link in the description and get your pre-approval now. You've pointed out several blind spots to me already, so I'm finding this very interesting. My suspicion is that your clients don't just want to live longer. My suspicion is they're much like me in that they want to lead. They want to lead longer. They want to think clear. They want to recover faster. So, what's your just at a high level? What's your framework for keeping entrepreneurs not just living longer, but in peak condition?
So the frame, and I actually just wrote something down because you said something brilliant. Live longer, lead longer. It's wonderful.
Mm,
I'm going to steal that line.
please.
Yeah. In order to keep folks peak, there's there's the biggest blind spot of all. And that's the one thing that I really I go after with folks. And the only way to do it is you have to get them to know, like, and trust you. And that's this. We all have something that holds us back. This isn't a peptide. This isn't a lab. This isn't an imaging study. It's none of those things. It's up here. And we all have something that holds us back. Maybe it was abuse as a child. Maybe
Mm,
it was death of a parent or a loved one when we were younger. Maybe it's just something that we saw or witnessed or we were bullied or whatever. There's something that gets planted usually at some point in childhood that we think of it all the time. We've thought of it, as a matter of fact, so many times that we've actually crafted our persona around that. And in the process of that dictates behavior patterns that we have. Now, this is what we know. Pausing on that thought for a second. We know that yes, genetics play a role. There's a lot of genetic tests you can buy, direct to consumer. But genetics aren't the whole thing. There's also the actual epigenetics of it, which is what are you exposed to? What are the habits that you have? What is the food that you take in? All of those things. And the
mhm.
two of those things together, that's what will ultimately dictate how long someone lives, how well they live. Well, the good news is genes you can't change. They are what they are, right? So you find out what the genes are, and you can say, okay, I have half of the map here, but you still need the other half of the map. And just like any treasure map where X marks the spot, you need to have the full picture before you can actually start the journey. So that's actually where I begin with folks is really getting to the nitty gritty of, okay, like let's have a real conversation of what is actually holding you back. And here's the thing, man, is a lot of times people don't know, where it's just it was either so far back or buried in the back of their mind, or something that is so close to them that they don't want to reveal it, that until they tackle that, everything else, you're just kind of forcing your way through. Being very vulnerable when I was a kid, I grew up very poor. When I was a kid, from 7 to 10, went through a fair amount of abuse.
Mm.
And it was something that I never talked about. And I didn't talk about it until maybe 10 years ago. I'm 48. So it's not a coincidence that that's where life really changed for me. It wasn't until I started actually taking the pain and everything that I suppressed for years through work, was a workaholic, never drank or got into drugs, but work and food, oh man, those are my two vices right there.
Mm.
It wasn't until I actually really did deep work on myself and started unpackaging those things that was able to get incredibly fit, build a very successful medical practice, become a multimillionaire. It wasn't a coincidence. So I drive that message to you because, like before we started the call, I talked about, the biohacking and all the things, whatever. Those are all good, but that's just icing on the cake. You need to have the cake first.
Mm.
And until you actually really start and do some deep work and say, okay, like where am I at with things? What is actually holding me back? And hopefully there's sure there's folks out there that haven't been through tremendous trauma. That's wonderful. But there's still thought patterns and so forth that will hold folks back. And until you tackle those, you really can't actually build the life that you really, really want.
What you're saying is absolutely landing with me. What is your process or protocol to get somebody to realize what those stresses were and get them to look at those things and get them to kind of blow off that charge that they may be, that decision that a kid makes because they're protecting themselves as a result of trauma sometimes follows with us for decades, and we don't realize that we are the way we are because we made a decision when we were at 11. So
Right.
what is your process for uncovering and releasing that stress around that trauma?
It varies per person because it depends on the type of trauma that there is. You know, um, a lot of times with folks, it's just putting them through a line of questioning.
Mm.
But here's the key. It's not just answering a question, it's answering it honestly. A lot of times we think that we're being honest with ourselves when we're not. When there's either, a bias for family or a particular religion or your
Mm.
community where you don't want to let folks down, where it's you may even when you're speaking just to yourself and it's not being projected outward to anywhere. There's such a hard frame that we'll keep on ourselves because we don't want to we don't want to break out of a mold. We don't want to shake things up too bit. Life is good right now, right? So life's good. Okay,
Mm.
well, what does good versus great look like? And a lot of times, I know I did this, where I was like, oh, life is good. I'm just going to stay here, right? Yeah, is it really what I want? No, but it's good and it's stable and it's safe. And so a lot of times we'll do that. So that's one of the first questions that I ask folks, and I pose this to your audience can do this as well, is what does going from good to great, what does that even look like for you? What does that look like for your body, your physicality? Not just the way you look, the way you feel. What does that look like for you in relationships? I know I've done this where, you know, you go and especially as a 40-something-year-old man, you meet another guy, you're at a conference, a business thing, a dinner, whatever it is. And within about 30 seconds, you know whether that it's a surface level conversation or not. I can't do surface level conversations. I just can't, you know? So, yeah, polite and so forth. But if it's only about sports or weather or what the stock market's doing, it's like,
Get
bro,
me out of here.
get me out of here. Like I want to talk to a real person, you know? And so when folks are doing that same level of conversation with themselves, it's like an egg, There's a shell that's there that's usually actually pretty thin, and the stuff's pretty gooey on the inside, but they've gotten to a point where they're like, nope, I got my shell up. I'm only staying here because it's good. It's good. I'm good. I don't want to shake things up. So that's the place where I really begin and really let someone give an answer. And by the way, if I think their answer is total BS, I'll be like, yeah, that's not it. So, so that's really where you can actually get somewhere and start moving forward.
I love the analogy of a surface level conversation and a surface level relationship with oneself.
Yeah.
That is a beautiful, beautiful analogy. And I'm sure many people that are listening to this similarly to me are thinking, this is not the kind of medical treatment that I have ever had in a hospital setting before. This is a much deeper level and definition of health. I'm excited to do more work with you.
Same here.
Let's talk a little bit about sleep and daily recovery.
Yeah.
Um, I read a book by the name of The Power of Full Engagement. I can't remember the author's name. Are you familiar with that book at all?
I'm not, but I'll check it out.
I'll give you just a high level. This gentleman used to be an athletic coach at the highest level in tennis, like coaching John McEnroe, if you will, right?
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
then when and I'm certain it was all about mindset and performance and what have you. And then when he got out of the professional sports game, he got into the coaching of CEOs and entrepreneur game. And I actually think you would find it a very fascinating read. And in that book, he talks about the difference when athletes work themselves to the bone, 10 out of 10 intensity. Immediately thereafter, they go into repair, rest, and restoration mode, and they prepare themselves for the next bout of 10 out of 10 intensity. And what he brings about is that when he started coaching Fortune 500 CEOs and entrepreneurs of huge private owned companies, they didn't have that rest, repair, and restoration. They would just run level 10 to level 10 to level 10, airplane, different continent, and they would never rest and repair. So I want to talk just a little bit about the importance of sleep. I saw you've done some great work on Instagram. I saw the favorite part of your 6-step sleep protocol was sleeping naked with your partner. By the way, that was my favorite part of that. But I
Mine
want to talk
too.
about yeah, we're guys. I want to talk about that the sleep hack and how incredibly important that is. But also, I want to talk about daily recovery because one of the things he talks about is the power of taking a walk in the sunshine between those meetings in the day that may be level 10 intensity. So, what could you do to guide us there?
So, when it comes to sleep, which is it's something because when you think about it, you're like, well, that's just sleep. Like, why is that even special? Because it's something that we naturally do, right? If you've ever, which I'm sure you have, you've gone hard for a long enough period of time where your body's like, no, you're going to sleep now. And you could be in the middle of something and then like it's like a computer powering down where it's just like the battery's so low, you're like, nope, you're going to sleep.
Done.
Um, you know, if you look at it from a performance standpoint, so start looking at sleep where it's like, okay, you're going to have a big event, a big day, a big week or something like that.
Hmm.
It's rare, particularly with entrepreneurs, that they take the time to start reverse engineering of, okay, what do I need to do sleep-wise to be prepared for it? Because there is such a thing as sleep debt, right? So I'll give you a perfect example. This just happened yesterday. He's a friend and patient of mine. He's a former professional bodybuilder, a seven-time Mr. Olympia. His name's Flex Lewis.
Wow.
And so Flex flew into Phoenix to see me yesterday. He lives in Vegas, so a short flight. But we were putting him through the Blindspot Ultimate Human Analysis yesterday, right? So yesterday was what Thursday. So Wednesday night, there's a lot of stuff for the holidays. I'm trying to get things ready. Taking care of patients. A lot going on right now. It's busy for everybody. So I'm in bed by 10. I didn't get to bed till like 1 in the morning, just with all
Mm.
the stuff I had going on. And I knew I had an early day because Flex was going to be here. And I'm sure this happens to you and a lot of people. I'm thinking about the to-do list of all the things that I need to get done. So it's 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm absolutely exhausted and I'm trying to fall asleep, which I usually can immediately. I couldn't fall asleep. I'm tossing and turning. I finally get to sleep. I wake up. It's still dark out. I'm like, oh, great. I beat my alarm. I get out of bed, start my morning routine and everything. Stay brushing my teeth, and I look at my phone. It's 2:45 in the morning. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I've only been asleep for like an hour and a half. Like, how did this even happen? You know? So I forced myself to try to go back to bed, catch another hour. No dice. I'm up and ready to go. Yesterday was a long day because, when I'm with a patient, I take the day with them. Plus, he's a buddy of mine, so we went out to dinner last night and everything as well. And as I'm driving home, I'm thinking to myself, this was really dumb. Like I have a podcast that I have to be on tomorrow. I need to be on point. So what did I do? Well, I'm usually up by 6 or so. I allowed myself to sleep in a bit. And I tell you this story. I didn't wake up today like 9:30 or so. And I tell you this because in the past I wouldn't have done that. In the
Mm.
past it was no. You have this hardline rule. You're up at this time. You're in bed at this time, which even in that video I had on Instagram, you really try to do. Like you try to keep that structure. But there is such a thing as burning the candle at both ends. And when you're indebted into sleep, you really can't function appropriately. So that's the main thing that I would drive home to folks is, you know, entrepreneurs, we're driven and we make these hardline rules for ourselves and you have a routine and you follow the routine, but you put a little asterisk on the end, which is you need to make sure you're taking care of yourself in the process. So go ahead.
No, 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 please.
Sleep debt. Sleep debt is one of the most dangerous things that there is. Because imagine you're doing that chronically, where let's say you need 8 hours a night and you're only getting six, and you're doing six Monday through Friday, but then on the weekends you're like, no, I need to stick to this routine because I said I would do this and I'll stick only to this routine. And you chronically will can never actually really catch up.
So physiologically, when tell us what the purpose of sleep is. Like what are the like I know how I feel, right? When we're sleep deprived, we're foggy. I don't know about you, but I get intense anxiety when I'm sleep deprived. I
Yeah.
see the worst possible outcome and the percentage chance that that worst possible outcome is going to happen seems to triple in my mind when I'm asleep. And some days I just literally say to myself, just shut your mouth and don't make any decisions and get to bed as soon as possible. But what's the physiological reason for why those things tend to happen?
I mean, sleep is our time where we restore and heal in in everything, in every one of our organ systems. So if you start thinking of it, you're from the muscles that are healing after the workout that you've done. That's the time that all of that hypertrophy is occurring. So,
Mhm.
for instance, you lift weights, you make tears in the muscle, you release myoglobin. That's why after a hard workout, when you urinate, the urine is very foamy and so forth. You have your kidneys that are working to clear out all the impurities and so forth. There's a reason why we lay down to sleep to make when you're laying like this, it's a constant blood pressure throughout the body. So blood
Mm.
pressure will drop, pulse rate will drop. You really kind of go into this restoration and healing mode. And then mentally, all those things are happening as well, where you're not having all this stimulus from the outside world that's going on inside. Instead, it's the inside world. This is the reason why, if you've been working on a problem, you're like, I can't really quite see how to make this work. And you even just write out what it is, a couple simple things on like a piece of paper or something, and you don't read it. Just visually let your eyes look at it before you go to sleep and have a good night of full rest. Sometimes in the morning you have the answer
Mm.
because your subconscious is actually working it through while you were doing that. It's the reason why we dream. When we dream, that's, a lot of times I think folks often put too much weight on dreams and so forth, where it's like, I had this dream. This means I need to go do that. Your dream, when we dream at night, it's basically your body taking all those little bits of information and all the millions of input that we had and for your younger viewers won't remember defragmenting a hard drive, but back in the day, you used to have to defragment a hard drive, right? And that's really what's going on, So it doesn't mean that, now you have to change your business or go buy a puppy. It's just whatever showed up in that dream that everything's kind of being filtered through. So it's an important time of restoration, really, for all of us. And if we don't take it appropriately, just like as you mentioned, you're off the next day physically tired, mentally tired, emotionally tired, all of those things.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Let's talk about not just sleep at night, but let's talk about the daily importance of having little recovery breaks and little breaks in the intensity of the day. I know when I go from a level 10 meeting or presentation and I go straight into email for 2 hours because now I'm behind because I've been preparing for that presentation and putting everybody else off. And then I go back into another high level meeting, I can feel that I'm operating at a much lower level. If I were
Absolutely.
to push those emails off and go for a 30-minute walk in the sunshine and then come back, I'm a different level of human. So what advice do you have, and what explanation perhaps could you give for why it is that I feel that difference when I behave those different ways?
The first advice I would give is folks need to learn to take the time to see what works best for them. And what I mean by that is, so you mentioned a 30-minute walk in the sunshine. Wonderful. For some folks, for some folks, it's going to be they need to veg out and watch TV for a few minutes.
Interesting. Okay.
For other folks, it's, meditation. Is meditation a good thing? Yeah, it's great. For some folks, the at least when they just start meditating, when you start getting into it in the first place, there's so much mental noise because it's so quiet. There's all this mental noise that's there that they're like, oh, I'm not going to meditate. All of a sudden, everything comes at me because they're used to having so many stimuli. These things, all it is a thing. It's not the phone's fault, but these were basically created to have pretty colors and to constantly be able to blast stuff at you. I mean, this is a marketing machine like in your pocket,
Yeah.
So one of the biggest things that I do is like, I'm just going to put my phone down for a little bit. I need to always be available for patients and such, but it's like, okay, I'm going to take 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and I'm just going to go set it in the other room. So I think the place to start is really asking yourself, okay, like, what do I do when I want to relax or calm down without using a substance, alcohol, a distraction, like, being on the phone or something like that? What is it that actually kind of brings me back to center? you know? And it's going to be different things for different folks, a lot of similarities, you know? I always being out in nature, I always feel better.
Yeah.
There's just something about, especially you're cooped up in an office or something. That's one of the things that I do is like, I need to go get some fresh air and just stand out in the sun, take a few breaths, watch a bird fly by. You realize that when you're in it so much with work and all your responsibilities, that there is a world out there and you're a part of all of that. So I think with what you're doing with go take a walk and so forth, I think it's a great place for folks to start and then find what works for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Know thyself for first.
Yes, absolutely.
People are fascinated with the easy button.
Yeah,
And and so I think I would be remiss if I didn't throw a few supplements past you to get your opinion.
sure.
Peptides, nicotine, creatine. Those seem to be the ones that I'm hearing the most about, and I think people are really interested in. So maybe we could just start at nicotine. What's your opinion on nicotine and the difference perhaps between smoked and inhaled nicotine compared to, like a nicotine toothpick or a nicotine pouch?
Yeah, great question. And I'm so glad that you brought it up because almost every entrepreneur I know is using a Zen pack. There's actually, if you go to my YouTube channel, I did a video on Zen packs. You should check it out because it does a pretty good breakdown of things. And here's the thing with nicotine. We know that, of course, when smokers with cigarettes, you get a hit of nicotine. So nicotine as a chemical compound has been kind of bastardized because of that, right?
Right.
The actual chemical compound of nicotine, not dangerous. It's not harmful per se to you. However, there are some downsides to it. Number one is it can raise pulse and blood pressure.
Yeah.
In an otherwise healthy individual, not that big a deal. It's going to raise pulse by maybe 10 points or something like that. It'll raise blood pressure 7 to 10 points. In someone who has already high blood pressure and it's not well controlled because they're an hard driving entrepreneur, and why the heck would they ever check their blood pressure? That could be very dangerous. If they're hanging out around 190 and now you popped up another 10 points, well, when you're hitting that systolic at 200, you're in stroke range.
Mm.
So that's what I mean is it's you got to watch these things. The second side of nicotine, the most addictive substance on the planet. It's 40 times more addictive than heroin.
Whoa.
Yeah. So there's a reason why you look at the bigness of big tobacco, of why it's trillions and trillions of dollars, is they had a product. Right? What better product to sell when you get someone addicted to it that you can just sell it for centuries? And that's essentially what's been done, you know? So the nicotine, because it's as addictive as it is, when you start on a Zyn pack, and whatever the lowest is, I think it's like 3 milligrams or something. Inevitably, you have guys that soon they're at 6, and then they're at 12, and then they're putting like one on each side and so forth because it just keeps going up and up and up. And if you go without it, now that you've become accustomed to it, you get anxious, you start getting kind of shaky, incredibly irritable, all of those things. So, do I think nicotine itself, the actual chemical, is problematic and so forth? No. Do I think there's a place for it? You know, if it's one of these things where you're not going to use it often, where you're like hitting the wall for some reason because you didn't do all the recovery things that we talked about, and somebody needs to pop a Zyn pouch or something, can that help to get you through? There's benefits where you can think faster, speak sometimes a bit more eloquently, get a bit of a boost, but there's a lot of downsides as well. So it's an individual decision of balancing those things. Personally, I'm not a fan of anything that you can be addicted to. You know,
Mm.
For me, like I'm a caffeine junkie, right? So for me, it's like I've limited myself now to 2 cups of coffee per day, and they'll be really good cups of coffee. You know, I'm a bit of a snob when it comes to my coffee, but that's all I'll have is two. In the past, when I was working in the hospital, man, I'd have like 6, 7 cups of coffee a day. So you start going by about an hour and a half, and if not, you're starting to get kind of shaky, you're getting a bit of a headache, all of those things. So when it comes to any of these performance things that you can use, is there a place for them? Sure. But you do need to practice moderation with it and understand what you're exposing yourself to.
I was at the All In Summit that was at UCLA earlier this year, and Tucker Carlson was there, and they were. I think he talks about the alpaca nicotine packs, and when he was on the stage, he admitted that he had two 12 milligram nicotine packs in at the same time.
Oh my
And I'm
God.
thinking to myself, like 24 milligrams of nicotine in your mouth at one time, like I would be blowing my brains out. That's
Yeah,
insane. So maybe
absolutely.
that's pushing it a little too far.
I agree.
All right, let's go peptides. And let me rapid fire a couple questions out as it
Sure.
relates to peptides. Specifically, I am curious about your thoughts around the efficacy of stacking different peptides at the same time. How important cycling on and off peptides is to you. And last but not least, I think this is a peptide, but I've been hearing about let me pronounce this, retatrutide, which is an experimental weight loss and metabolic drug being developed by Eli Lilly. I've been hearing a few people talk about it. I know nothing about it. So stacking peptides, cycling peptides, and if you know anything about this retatrutide that I'm butchering the pronunciation of.
Yeah, I think it's retatrutide.
That sounds much better than I said it.
Yeah, so we'll start with that one. So retatrutide, it's an interesting drug. Now, notice I said drug. Why? Because there's a big misnomer when it comes to peptides. There's this idea that, well, all a peptide is it's a fragment of a protein, and protein's good for you, right? Therefore, peptides are good for you. No, my friend, a peptide is a drug. Let's just be
Hmm.
very clear,
Okay.
right? And when you start actually framing it in that way, you know, there's when you say the word drug, people go, big pharma, right? Think of a drug as all as it is, caffeine's a drug, nicotine's a drug. These are all different chemical compounds that will give a result.
Hmm.
And so that's what you're looking for is you're looking for what is the result, and you want it, of course, to be a favorable one. But there's pros and cons to everything. This is the way that life works. So GLP-1s, probably the most famous peptide of all.
Hmm.
And there's been tremendous benefit for folks worldwide on GLP-1s. They were initially started so that that way as not just for weight loss, but also to help metabolism in diabetics. And because the ultimate driver behind diabetes is a metabolic syndrome where sugar isn't being used effectively. And so we know that especially in earlier diabetics, if you can get them to lose enough weight and have better blood sugar control, insulin levels will likely follow and they'll do better. Well, this works so well that not only was it working for diabetics, once Hollywood got wind of this, then this is where Ozempic really came out. And you heard all the stuff about Ozempic face. And you had all these, you see all these movie stars and singers and everything that were losing tremendous amounts of weight. It's a peptide. So you think of Ozempic as a drug. Ozempic is a peptide. Same. You have to apply that same thing to all these other peptides that are out there as well. You know, so briefly, retatrutide, it works on three different receptors versus tirzepatide works on two, and Ozempic worked on one. It's kind of like every year you get a new iPhone, same deal. So now you're getting different versions where it's like the 3.0 version may work better than the 1.0 version. Does that mean that if you have an iPhone that's 3 years old, it's not going to work? No, it'll still work. Maybe not quite as well, but it depends on the person and what their needs are and so forth. So everybody's jumping to this. Got to get a hold of this retatrutide because it's going to give better results than the other one. It may. It depends on the individual, and what you're trying to do with it. With any of those, it's to help really control metabolism. Number one. Number two, it slows down gastric emptying. This is really the key thing of how these work is so someone stays fuller for longer because of the gastric emptying slowdown. The downside of that, people hear easy button, or in this case, easy injection, and they're like, well, if I'm taking this, I can eat whatever I want. No. So now that you've slowed down gastric emptying, if you go try to cram down 4 pieces of pepperoni pizza, it's going to be a bad night.
Mm.
Where you have nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. Some folks end up going to the emergency room because the nausea and the vomiting is so bad because this hangs around in the system for a period of time. So when you start understanding really how GLP-1s work, that's where you can start actually starting to optimize these a little bit. Now, I'm not giving medical advice, but I will say there are some benefits to microdosing these things. And so, for example, when Ozempic came out, which is AKA semaglutide, I had a patient of mine, amazing guy, very, very high level entrepreneur. And he came to me and he said, you know what? I'm having a problem with gambling. And when it comes to gambling, it's like every time you get a win, you get a dopamine hit, right? So this is how
Mm.
slot machines work, is lose, 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 you're about to give up, you get a little win. Lose, 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 so forth and so on. House always wins in the end. So I started thinking about it and I was like, okay, if gambling, if all it really is a dopamine hit, is there something that we could give him where it would kind of blunt the dopamine hit? So I tried microdosing semaglutide with him, not for weight loss, but just to help to unhinge this dopamine hit that comes from it. And lo and behold, he was able to get the gambling under control.
Wow.
Now, this makes sense if you think about it. If you've ever had a strawberry milkshake, my favorite type of milkshake, all right? So you have a strawberry milkshake, and that first hit, you drove through Chick-fil-A, you got the strawberry milkshake in your hand. You don't wait till you're out of the drive-through line. You have it in your hand, you pop in the straw, you take that hit of that, and as soon as you do, life feels amazing. You're happy, you're like, oh, today's a good day, all those things. Why? Because you just got hit with sugar and you just got hit with fat. And that's what we are engineered for. If we go back to our scavenger days, our ancestral days, that's the reason why we crave sugar and fat, is you'll go after these things instinctively. Why? Because they're higher calorie. And when we were foraging and hunting and so forth, You didn't know when your next meal was going to be. DoorDash didn't exist yet. So we're genetically engineered towards that stuff. Now that we live in a day and age where food is plentiful and the food isn't as nutritious, that's a whole other conversation, but food is plentiful. So now those genes that we carried over to have this dopamine hit for food, for sugar and fat, now they're problematic and cause a lot
Mhm.
of us to be obese. So that's the other way that these drugs work is it helps to unhinge that mechanism. Anyone that you know that have taken a GLP-1, food really becomes like fuel. You really don't get hungry. You have to eat, and it's almost a nuisance. You're like, okay, got to go eat again. Or you get invited out to a dinner or something like that, and you're looking at the menu and you're like, none of this actually really looks appetizing to me, but protein. I heard Dr. Boyd say I need to eat protein when I'm on these things. Otherwise, I'm going to get Ozempic face. Same premise. So you need to prioritize protein, otherwise you lose too much muscle mass. And then when that weight loss journey is done, folks have a lot of floppy skin and so forth, and are actually end up pretty deconditioned.
So what I'm hearing you say is it's not necessarily good nor bad, but it needs to have a protocol with it, and it
Correct.
needs to be part of the holistic plan.
Yeah, absolutely. Of really what it is that you're looking to create. Again, it goes back to reverse engineering of like, okay, what's the win here? Is it to lose 30 pounds? Or is it to lose 30 pounds while either maintaining or adding muscle mass so that you can be ready for the big talk you're going to give on stage so that you can, be more energetic with the kids so that you can, get your lipids and your blood sugar and everything under control. Folks, a lot of times, will just be like, well, I want to get into this dress size that I have, you know? Okay. That's the what, but what's the why behind that? Why do you
Mm.
want to be in that dress size? Well, it increases confidence. Okay. Well, now that your confidence is increased, what are you going to do with that?
I'm guessing you're going to give me a similar answer, but talk really quickly about stacking different peptides, not
Mhm.
necessarily things like Ozempic and things like that, but um, there's so many incredible peptides that are out now. Talk about stacking and talk about cycling, if you would, really briefly.
Sure, absolutely. So the first thing with peptides that folks need to understand is that none of these are FDA cleared. Now, it's not to say that, the FDA has to put their stamp of approval on everything, but it is it does, it kind of puts the lines in the road. Does give some governance where these things are, right? So there are so many peptides that are out there that you have a bunch of influencers, everything that are pushing these things that are made in China, that are made in India. If you've ever ordered a peptide, you get a little vial of white dust with a label on it that looks like somebody made it at home. You're like, what the heck is this? And you're gonna buy some bacteriostatic water from Amazon, chat GPT how to mix this thing up and inject it in you willy-nilly. That doesn't seem to make, if somebody just walked up and handed you a vial of something and said, inject this, you wouldn't do it. Yet somehow we think this is okay with peptides. So my first bit of advice is, personally, I think folks should have a trusted physician that they're working with in order to guide them on the peptides. And that trusted physician should have done due diligence to figure out where are these peptides coming from? Do they have third-party testing? Are they safe? That's kind of the key thing.
Got
Because
it.
otherwise, folks will try to be cheap and they just order stuff online and they get a little pile of white dust and they think they figure out how to make the concentration correct, and then they just start injecting themselves. That's a bad idea. So please don't do that. Now, to answer your question, there are some peptide stacks depending on what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So one of my favorite ones, tesamorelin.
Hmm.
Tesamorelin is such an interesting peptide. It actually came out in like the early 2000s as a drug for folks who had HIV and AIDS that were on protease inhibitors. And protease inhibitors increase, one of the side effects is it increases visceral fat tremendously. So this was a drug that I forget what drug company came out with it, but when they created this, it worked really well to decrease visceral fat. And visceral
Interesting.
fat around organs is very dangerous because it's very pro-inflammatory. And like we said at the beginning of the podcast, when there's inflammation, there's usually trouble that's following. The reason why it was discontinued is it was so damn expensive that folks really couldn't afford it. So it got set to the side. Eventually, the patent, after 7 to 10 years or whatever it is, the patent falls off. And then a peptide company picked it up and now it's mass marketed. But it works really well to get rid of visceral fat. So folks that, if you're the aging athlete that you have this belly fat that you're like, I feel firm and everything, but I kind of have this belly fat that won't seem to go away, works really nicely with it. It works especially nicely, not a peptide, but testosterone. When the guys are on testosterone and testosterone, I take this myself. Now you can increase muscle mass, slow aging, get rid of belly fat at the same time. You add on top of that some BPC 157, which helps with muscle recovery and healing of all the small injuries that occur, like when you start making pulls on tendons and little tears and ligaments and things like that. So that's a stack that I use personally, on the regular and really, really like. And it's one that's actually pretty safe. The tesamorelin, usually folks will cycle on it for about 90 days or so, take a little bit of a break. If you still need to do more, you take a break for a month or so, you cycle another 90 days. But again, you have to understand, well, what's am I trying to accomplish here? If it's to increase muscle mass, decrease body fat, which is a good idea for the majority of people, and try to create some enhanced healing in the process thereof, it works really great for anyone who's trying to stay fit and fabulous as they're getting older.
It's great. I could go on for another 3 hours, but I am going to be respectful of your time. I appreciate all that you've shared with our audience. And I know that you have answered a lot of these questions across your various social media channels. So, where's the best place for people to find you? And then, personally, full disclaimer, I've already filled out a client form with Dr. Boyd, and I plan to go to Blindspot Medical. Hopefully, I can meet with him in January. I would seriously encourage people, if this is interesting to you and you want to live not just long, but you want to lead long and you want to live well, take it to the next level and figure out where your blind spots are and book an appointment with him and meet him down in his beautiful office in Phoenix, Arizona. Where can people find and learn from you online, Dr. Boyd?
So Instagram is really the best way. It's David Boyd MD is my handle. Same thing on YouTube. If you put in David Boyd MD, you'll find I have a series of videos there where we break down things just kind of like with what we did. And then my website, blindspotmedical.com, where you can just apply to be a patient. And excited to have you come down, man. Looking forward to it.
Very much as well. And everybody should go immediately to Instagram, find Blindspot Medical, and listen to his 6 steps for better sleep. That one was really good. I love
Yeah,
that.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, if you go to David Boyd MD on Instagram, you'll see it there. And I try to keep things as entertaining as possible while dropping some good information. So thank you. I appreciate you.
You certainly do that. Well, thanks for being here, and I hope to have you back as a guest in the future, Dr. Boyd.
Absolutely. I'd be honored.